Hello and welcome. Today we have a special guest in Software Arc Talks. And today podcast is a special podcast from DaShaun. DaShaun Carter is known as a Spring advocate, but today we are not talking about Spring. We are talking about special topic. So say hello, DaShaun, please.
Hello. I'm super happy to be here. We had our first conversation a few weeks ago, and ever since then, I was thinking about how do I get this message across for your part of the world, for the Middle East, knowing that most of your audience speaks Arabic. Since you started posting, I've had a lot more like reach outs on LinkedIn and on Twitter from that part of the world, and it's been wonderful. And I'm contributing all of that catalyst to you. And the one thing that I've been thinking a lot about was, what does this look like? I'm hoping that we can come up with a way to transcribe and translate when this gets distributed, because I think it's great. It's something that we should be able to accomplish. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we get that across, how we do that.
It's interesting. It's interesting. And we would like also to invite you to speak in Arabic later. So it's not only for Arabians. So DaShaun, the mic is all yours. So please, can you tell us what are you going to tell us about today?
Yeah, well, this whole concept is what I consider, like, I call it juiced, and we'll see why in a little bit, but I put things into buckets. When I work with organizations, I work with organizations all over the world. And previously I was in a sales position, the solution architect position. So it wasn't even internal. It was for different orgs all over the world. And one of the things that I took away was like, there's a few things that kind of separate the good, better, and best buckets. And what I'm trying to do here is outline and identify what makes that best bucket. So this content was originally set for kind of that sales solution architect, that sales engineer type role. But as I have looked back at it, I think it actually, a lot of it applies to that solution engineer, that solution architect that you see in most larger software organizations. So I think that it maps, and there's a few places where I kind of talk about how it's going to map versus the sales engineer, but also in like consulting, and those solution integration type roles. So that's what it's going to be about. We'll get started. It's just kind of a collection of a bunch of, actually did a lot of research. I interviewed a lot of folks. I kind of played this story back several times, and so I've got input from easily 200 solution engineers or sales engineers over the years.
Why did you decide to name it Juiced?
You're going to see that, so you got to stay tuned to see where that came from. So we'll get started. I'll do it in a little intro. The magic here is today is day 600 in this current role that I'm in. The role that I'm in really has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but in the role that I'm in right now, it's day 600. So that's kind of cool. Before that, I was a solution or senior partner solution architect at Redis. And this is kind of where this all came from, was my days on the sales side. Before Redis, I was at Pivotal, which got acquired by VMware, which I'm back at now. I was there for a while, but my experience isn't all just sales, right? I was a VP of engineering before that, and I was tech lead engineer at Garmin before that. And there's a lot of years in front of that, but I didn't want to give away my age. So you can find me at these places, and we'll get started. This idea of learning. What does it take to learn? How do we learn? In every role, I think today, we're drinking from the fire hose. Things move fast, and it's hard to find the right content to consume. Like, hey, should I read this blog or this article? You're getting bombarded with a new newsletter every day, right? Somebody's trying to, hey, subscribe to my newsletter. And sometimes it feels like we're taking many, many days to prepare for like a 1 hour demo or a 1 hour review of our architecture. So these are the things that I've learned, and I've got scar tissue from years of being behind the keyboard. And one of the things especially on the sales side, is the difference between winners and losers is, not who has access to the latest technology, but how it's being applied. There are definitely engineers and architects somewhere that have access to all the latest and greatest hardware, all the latest and greatest software of the stuff that I can't afford. They're definitely out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll win. There's doing what you can with what you've got is a big part of how you're going to succeed.
Exactly.
And there's hard parts. The hardest part of technology sales is making sure the customer is successful with the product that we sell them by delivering meaningful outcomes. So it's not just like, hey, go use this, you're going to get this little bit. It's got to be meaningful. It's got to show some value at the end. And this is also, I think this is what maps to like internal customers as well. Like, swap out the sales part. It's for like your internal stakeholders. I've got a solution that I think is going to save our organization hours or money or reduce or improve our sales, some measurable outcome. How do you get that across? How do you get that solution to success? Getting that solution to technical close with an enablement plan that ensures their ability, the customer's ability to be highly effective in adopting our solution after the sale. After I pitch it, like, hey, here's what we need to do. Here's the plan that's going to make us successful after you agree. Like, hey, would it be nice to have 2 millisecond latency on our database? Yeah, you agree? Cool. Here's the plan that we can do to make sure that we get the value from that, those meaningful outcomes. So this is just kind of some of those takeaways. This is how I like to look going forward. And a lot of times it's an experiment. A lot of times it's just having the right idea for the right spot. A lot of times I feel like, hey, I've got a hammer, and then everything looks like a nail, right? So it just depends on the tools that you have and applying those tools in the right way. But beyond just I got it to work, what about everybody else in the organization? Like, are you giving training? Are you giving the right documentation? There's a lot that goes in to making something successful, whether that's internal in your organization or something that you're selling to a customer. So after that, this is the juiced solution architect. So there's like the normal engineer. Now here's somebody that's ready. I want to be a solution provider, having deep knowledge of the technology with a unique background and experience that give instant credibility, right? I've gotten a lot of these requests lately. They sound like, hey, I've been doing software for X number of years and I'm still in the same role. What do I need to do to get to the next level, to get to the next, title or whatever? And there's a lot of questions. My default answer is you have to have some deep skill set. You've got to have some experience that's going to give you credibility. You might have the absolute right answer, but if you have the wrong title, it's going to be harder to get across. So there's kind of a balancing act that you have to do. One of the things I like to say is there's infinite ways to get there, but there are really no shortcuts. I believe in just every rep, putting in the work, being consistent, and we're going to see more about that shortly. But beyond that, being more juiced, like what does it take beyond that? Oh, I've got the credibility and I've got the experience. Then what? Well, you've got to be fanatical about the competition. And that competition could be the existing solution that your company is delivering, or it could be whatever the competitive company is delivering, but being able to address that competitive story, being able to explain all of these cases simply. There are liabilities for that competitive offering, removing customer objections, internal, external, especially in those hyper competitive situations. This is what it means to be more juiced. Like where, hey, yeah, I don't have the exact story. Maybe I am the junior guy, but I've got the solution and I know what their solution is lacking, and being able to tell that story. So I'm trying to kind of balance this act between being on a sales side and being a solution engineer, sales engineer, and that person that's just trying to get their voice heard inside of an organization, deliver a new solution inside the organization. But it takes deliberate practice. Every time that you practice your pitch, every time that you review your own work, every time you add a test, every time you validate a test, you validate your assumptions. those reps all count. Rep meaning repetitions, like doing it again. One of those practices that I had early in my career was build something, get it to work, and literally just throw it away and come back and try to build it again. Have it make sense, or build something, get an understanding, and explain to somebody else how to build it and see what their feedback is immediately. So just some of those practices that we've learned along the way. 70% of the skills that you need to do any job are learned on the job. That's a made up stat, but like you get the idea. It's like most of the stuff that we're doing in your job today, you learned about that. You've got that muscle doing it on the job. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to show everybody that this thing that I'm doing, the way that I'm delivering my slides, I'm using a platform called Reveal.js. And I have this kind of, it's a 2-dimensional slide deck. I can do things fast across the top, or I can decide to go deep on different things. And I've got my own kind of the way that I tell a story. So this is all kind of mapped out, but I'm practicing what I preach. Like this is the way I deliver most of my content. And this is kind of the way that I tell most of my stories. I start out, I'm going to go back. I start out with kind of the intro that I did. Hey, here's my intro. And then I go into just kind of a warmer, like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm going to make sure that I'm talking to the right audience and connecting the dots. Then I kind of reframe the warmer, like, hey, here's what you might have done. Here's something else that you might want to consider.
So you even practice to demo something or to document something to others.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
So when I'm, Spring 1 is coming up, VMware Explore, it's going to be in Las Vegas here in just a couple of weeks. And all the presentations, I have a handful. Everything that I prepare, I've got my own way of telling a story that makes it easy. Because I'm telling stories in this same kind of framework all the time, it makes it really easy to crank it out. Again, the repetitions that I've put into telling the story this way makes it so that I can do it. I'll show another behind the scenes. Let's go to my GitHub and let's look. And you'll see that, hey, this repository, I just created this repository just a few minutes ago. It says 26 minutes ago. This is the repository. This is another cheat code. I made it so that my presentation that I'm delivering, it's here for you to go and grab. And you can see the way that I deliver my story, and you'll see then my markdown. Hey, my intro, my warmer, my reframe, my rational drowning, my personal impact, the new way. This is how I deliver a story. And it's not always a sales story, but this is the order that I like to tell stories in because it works. And I've got a lot of reps doing it. So I know where I can put in a demo. I know where I can slide in a pitch or whatever. It tells a story. And I have this automatically because it's GitHub. I have it automatically set here to do a GitHub pages. So that GitHub repository just gets published. So now if you look up here closely, you can see it's on my website. It just gets published by GitHub pages to my website. So everybody can go see it. These are just some of those cheat codes. So again, getting back, you can do the same thing if you're using internal GitHub Enterprise or GitLab. There's tons of ways to get to the solution where your documentation is just automatically getting published. And we have a lot to work, right? So now back to the story, this solution architect, there's a lot of things that we've got to know today. Containers, DevOps, I'm doing the rational drowning. I'm telling you, there's a lot of things, and this is all true. Like, you know, that you hear these words day in and day out. There's always something new coming around. And then I do it a little bit more. Like, hey, you know, today it's all about AI and vector similarity search and all the other things, right? Security, software, bill of materials. Like, you got to have a documented, well documented and chain that says, hey, here's all the things that have happened that I'm forgetting the word, but that provenance of where your software is coming from and where your software is running, all the ways that your software is going to start up and scale down and scale to zero, et cetera, and where it's going to run. Do you really care where it runs as long as it runs? So there's a lot of stuff that we've got to know. Oh, but there's more, right? Migrations and modernization. How are we going to keep our software updated? How are we going to do those automated upgrades? I don't want to have to take time away from what I'm working on today to go back and repair something that I worked on 2 months ago because now a new CVE has been released. And it's code that I haven't touched in months. And now I've got to change the context and flush my own cache in order to go back and remember what I did months ago. What I'd rather do now in 2023 is get software to a state where it can be automatically updated. And I don't have to switch context for all of those hundreds of things that I've got running in production with my name on it. I don't want to have to switch context to go back and make those changes. And I talk about a lot of that stuff a lot of times, things like open rewrite and your software supply chains and the way that you're delivering software infrastructure, right? So how do you get those, keep those maintained and get things to production automatically so you can do the other more important things? Where are you going to run it? Kubernetes is the thing. Maybe you've heard of the Internet of Things, where like out on the edge. Oh, and then there's Kubernetes out on the edge. But reading the rule book for American football won't make you a football player. Playing football and practice is how you become a football player. And this is from my friend Mick. As I was kind of telling the story, I've kind of gone over this juiced solution architect outline many, many times. There was a point where I thought I was going to write a book because I was spending so much time having this conversation and learning new things. I was like, yeah, there's definitely something here. But as I was telling, he kind of played that back to me. So he's my friend and I get to throw him in my notes. It keeps it personal. So then I go into my story. This is my personal story, how this pattern affected me and what I saw. So I was a solution architect at Pivotal, which got acquired by VMware. And when I first started, they basically gave me this training, like 90 days. Here's what you're gonna do. The first 30 days, get this done. For 60 days, study this, know how to do this list of things, read these books, etc. But most of my time was spent alone trying to do this training and understand this product that I was selling, that I was a happy customer of, but now I had to turn it around and sell it. And not just my use case, but I had to understand a few other use cases for that product. After that, shadowing really helped. Seeing somebody else do the job, seeing somebody else in that role, and this I think maps to any role, seeing somebody else do it really helps you understand and helps you decide and determine how you're going to do that same role. Partnering helped, like finding other people, maybe not inside of my org, but in other orgs, to come up with solutions was an important part. One of the things that I like to share as a cheat code is use your vendors, right? If you've got Oracle database and you've got an Oracle issue, if you're not calling Oracle to get help, that's your fault. You've got to use the vendors. You're paying for, commercial software, enterprise software, et cetera, or even open source software support. If you're paying for it, use it. Those dollars that you're spending are meant to be used. Your vendors want you to be successful. Anybody, and that's internal or external. If you've got relationships with partners, vendors, et cetera, use them. It's there. And that was a big ticket. But also having a community of peers or other was a big part. So this is where this juice comes in. Join us in creating excitement. I did a workshop for a customer with a partner, really good friend, Robert Zurchia, who, we did this workshop. We worked on it for weeks to deliver, and that workshop ended up getting delivered because we worked on it together. That workshop existed in a GitHub repository. We were both able to go and use it, and then we were able to hand it off to the customer. So the customer could iterate on it and redeliver it. So they didn't have to call us. It was kind of an I do, we do, you do situation where we showed it first. Then we had the customer come and show it with us. And then we watched the customer as they delivered it after we were done. Remember, I talked about that strategy beyond the sale, that thing that you're going to do for your organization, maybe in another state or in another geo, where you want to say, hey, here's how you're going to do. Here's how you're going to teach it first. And here's how you're going to get that expansion, that expanded growth. At the end of that first workshop that we did together, he looked at me and he said, that's it. That's the juice. Join us in creating excitement. It's a term that was kind of used in the pivotal ecosystem at the time, and I never heard it, but I understood it then, and that's where I took it. Ever since then, it's been juice.
So
From there,
DaShaun, you engage the customers while you are doing the task, or you engage the customer at the end?
Both. So that's a great answer. So the workshops, for example, I've got a workshop coming up here in a few weeks where I'm going to go to the customer and I'm going to show off, hey, here's some amazing capabilities. You've seen workshops. You think of it as like a YouTube video that you might look for anything. Hey, I'm trying to learn how to use Cloud Foundry. There's tons of YouTube videos out there that explain Cloud Foundry and why you might use it. A workshop is kind of that same thing, but it's interactive. It gives you the ability to ask questions, help me understand. And it's kind of a step-by-step walkthrough with a little bit of mental challenge so you can make it sticky. We want the customer, we want that, whether it's internal customer or somebody that we're selling to, we want that to be sticky. We want them to understand it. And that hands-on, deliberate practice is what you get out of a workshop versus watching something on YouTube. So
and you repeat,
absolutely.
this workshop. So it's like having short feedback loop.
Yep. So now I want you to think about this. There was a time, and I was that tech lead engineer, where, hey, here's something that I think is amazing. I think it would help other engineers in my organization do something cool, do something better, save them money or save them time. Here's something I think they should use. So I might pitch it. I might say, hey, friend, Senthil, why don't you come over and take a look at this? That's my first feedback loop. It's like, hey, what do you think? Get feedback. Now, hey, maybe I'll go ask Josh. Hey, Josh, take a look at this. I got some feedback from Senthil. What do you think? And just that organic growth. But that's, I'm going to call that a pitch. Even if it's like my internal 10-person engineering team, I want to present my ideas. I want to get feedback. It's almost like a scientific method. Like, hey, here's my hypothesis, take it to practice, get some feedback, right? Validate it. But that workshop, that's what I did. And the idea, and I'm showing it here, I like to deliver things that I don't really need to put my name on it. I don't have to be the person that changed the game. I care more about the outcomes. I care more about the kind of the community. So when I deliver stuff like this, like I'm showing here, take it. Go take this exact same talk. You've heard me do it. I want you to take this talk and the markdown associated. I want you to go take it and I want you to modify it. If you like it, use it and share it and redo it, but make it your own, right? Like put your spin on it, use your style. I talk about that too, but I'm making it public. That's one of those ways that I like to deliver content. And by being in that mindset, that I am developing something that I want somebody else to take and build and continue on.
Exactly. This is the whole reason.
Yeah. So whether it's me and my engineering team having that mindset that I'm not going to be the only one that's using this, it helps. It changes the way that I deliver things. But then now, especially in sales, what are the things that you want your customer to take away, right? If I'm delivering something about my product, again, I want to take into account what is the competitive offering doing? What is that competitive offering going to do in their workshop? Right? And I try to think about those things. These are the types of thoughts and practices that I think put a juiced essay, that best bucket, solution engineer or sales engineer. So after the workshop piece, and that's kind of the top, it's at the top for a reason. I like this office hours piece. And this office hours, I'm going to go into a little bit more, but the office hours concept that I'll show is it's for customers, but it's also for peers, where in that role, in the role that I'm in now, I like to have a situation, a weekly or a multiple time weekly conversation where I get to tell the stories of all the cool new stuff that I'm working on. Plus, I like to get feedback. So you're aware of the spring office hours, and this is a weekly show that we do, but it's this same kind of concept, right? The spring office hours isn't selling anything. It's a community driven concept. Very similar to a lot of other softwares that are out there. Just this idea, we've got to be able to connect with our community. Now, on the sales side, it's pretty important. So you can get that feedback loop. So that brings into this conversation the idea of a product instead of a project. Things that I'm taking to production, it's important to have that documentation, to have that onboarding, to make it so that somebody else can take it over when I move on to something bigger and better. So think of whatever you're working on today. Think of the thing, the software, the project, product that you're working on getting in production. Hey, it's going to be released in November. Wouldn't it be nice if in November your product was packaged in such a way that you had a feedback loop? It already had a regular community office hours, weekly or monthly, where your internal customers were using it. Wouldn't it be great if the documentation was all there and it's automatically published to some GitHub or some developer portal that you have internally? Wouldn't it be nice if come November that goes to production and your leadership says, hey, we're ready for you to move on, and you could leave without ever having to look back at that product again because it's ready. It's ready for somebody else to pick up and take over. That's something that I learned from being a consultant. That's something that I learned early on in my career is when I'm ready to move on to the next thing, I don't want to worry about my phone ringing from somebody saying, hey, how do we do this thing on this thing that you built for us? So this all kind of bringing a lot of this experience that I've got up front, and that's where this office hours comes in. I like to work with my peers. I want to get that feedback. I like to look for who's going to take over my role. One of the things I kind of learned along the way was one style of leadership is to find somebody that will replace you.
Correct.
Right? Train your replacement so that when you go on to that president role from the vice president, you move on to the president role, that your vice president is ready and trained and ready to help you. This is my favorite time of the week. I like office hours because I still like to learn. It's a two-way street, but by far, I like the office hours. So the spring office hours that we do, that you are aware of, that's not the only office hours that I do every week. I like this practice so much that I've kind of built it into other parts of my career, my day-to-day. But this is where I like to share cheat codes. And this is also where I like to make sure that we don't make the same mistake twice. So here's what this all has done for me in my career. This approach, the way that I look at solution architects, the personal growth part, personal growth is going to happen outside of your comfort zone. If you're just comfortable going in and clocking out every day, there's not going to be personal growth. Plain and simple. Personal growth. You've got to be a little bit uncomfortable in order to grow. But I'm not completely uncomfortable. So I also kind of like to say, hey, keep one foot planted on what you know, and then put that other foot out in the uncomfort and the part that you don't know. So
in average, how long do you spend outside work in this uncomfortable zone?
So if I go back, that first slide, my introduction, this whole like 600 days thing, I started doing that here when I was in this role. And why did it stick? Somebody did this. His name was James Weaver. I saw him do this in a presentation. He had been in this role for like 5 years and he kept it as days. And it was, to him, he said it was a reminder of how long I've been doing this. And every once in a while, it reminds him how much he's grown. Well, in this role, I was uncomfortable and I liked it. Hey, I was in a role where it was a startup and I was nervous. So I was nervous, concerned for 985 days. And I kept on doing it here because this was my first time ever in a sales role. I was very uncomfortable. So I say for 845 days, I was very uncomfortable. For 845 days, I was learning a ton. So this is why I do it here. I want to be uncomfortable because I am constantly seeking that personal growth. It'd be great if I could get paid twice as much to do the same thing. But I don't know if that would get me out of bed. I enjoy that personal growth. So that's why I put that on there. And that personal growth is, I always want to be uncomfortable.
This is also outside work, right?
Inside and outside of work. Yeah.
So for example, your GitHub, you have tons of repositories, and
Yeah.
all of them. I recently used one for testing GraalVM.
Wonderful.
So how long do you spend per day to do something new and to learn something in terms of hours, for example?
Yeah. So let me actually jump, and I'll tell kind of a side story. Let's see if I can draw a little picture. And draw it like this. In my career, I'm going to put a date on here. This is when I started doing web development. So back then it was, Apache, and I was doing Perl and CGI bin stuff. But that's when I started doing it I started my own business, and I continued that all the way up until like 2008-ish. And it was like 1999 when I actually finished university, but I kept this on the side. I was doing whatever, 5 to 10 hours a week of like real work. It wasn't crazy real, but it was infrastructure. It was data centers. It was stuff that was different than what I was doing here. There was kind of a fear of being pigeonholed. Like, hey, maybe I found myself in a role where I wasn't really excited about what I was doing. It was maybe like hey, I'm going to do this, but the role after this was exciting. So my time here, I got comfortable, like, hey, this is all right. This is, maybe it is a higher paycheck and less personal growth. But I knew that, hey, I always had this other channel to kind of engage. And my situation is weird. I understand my survivor bias is like, this might not work for everybody. But for me, the way I am, I'm a geek. So my spare time, right? It's midnight 30 for me right now. My spare time, like, I'm not getting paid for this. Like, hey, I've got a job, but this is just extra. This is what I like to do. So I'm passionate about what I'm doing and how I teach and how I deliver. That's the intrinsic value. That's the value that makes my heart smile, and it makes me smile. And so I do it a lot. So my time today, it's hard to measure which time that I'm spending is work versus not, because a lot of time I'm here in this room, in this seat, for way more than 40 hours a week.
But the hard days you spent before make it easy today.
Yeah. And I'll say this, the learning how to learn part of it, like, once you've been uncomfortable and like, hey, here's how I learn, that's a big, so I'm gonna write some notes here, and I might need to add this. Learning how to learn. Like, how do you learn best? Like, that's a question that I had to understand and answer for myself. I talked about that first training, like reading books. I'm not good at reading. If I crack a physical book, and read 5 pages in a physical page turner, I'll be asleep 5 pages max. But audiobooks, I can go for a walk and I can listen, and I can actually focus on an audiobook. And if you ask me a question about what happened in chapter 1, when I'm on chapter 3, I'll be able to remember it. But sometimes when I'm reading, again, just me, sometimes when I'm reading, I get to the bottom of the page and I have no idea what I just read. So I've learned how I learn. I've learned the things that make it easy for me to learn. Some people like long projects. I'm more of a quick turnaround, micro learn, small chunks. So yeah, learning how to learn is an important part of this process. And maybe I need to add that part to it. But yeah, how do I spend time? And I think I actually cover it. This personal growth part, you can be doing that during work. Like, you should be spending time on your job doing an iteration, doing experiments in what you're doing during your job, during your day job. This kind of stuff, this personal growth, this uncomfortable stuff, it makes it more enjoyable, right? When I'm uncomfortable and, oh, hey, I learned this new thing. And especially if somebody else shares it and you can share it with somebody, that makes it amazing. So I talked about here this with my peers. One of my best memories of my time while I was at Pivotal was we had this weekly roundtable, and it wasn't everybody that showed up. People kind of showed up when they could, just like in office hours. People show up when they can, but we kind of went around the room and everybody shared something that they've learned. They shared a solution, they shared a demo, or they just practiced a demo. Maybe it wasn't even anything new. Maybe it was the exact same demo that we saw last week, but they changed it a little bit and they're delivering it just to get feedback. One of my best memories is when I was learning from my peers, and we'll get to that in a little bit more as well. So personal growth makes it more rewarding, enjoyable, and it's stickier. Things that you do are stickier when you do it with somebody else, that teamwork. So I say, if you want to go fast, go alone, right? You can put in the 24 hours and you'll figure out a solution and you'll wear yourself out. But if you want to go far, go together. African proverb. You've got to practice your craft, practice your demos, practice your builds, practice things. One of those practices that I got is I want to be able to delete everything and build it again. I don't want to have some system running and expect it to be running. I expect things to disappear. And that's something that I've had long before the term cloud native came around. On my Linux box, my work laptop, I like to reinstall. I like to grab the latest version of Linux. I like to repave my laptop, my daily driver, delete everything, rebuild it, and go. Having those shell scripts and environment variables and your aliases, having that in a GitHub repository makes that easy. But again, that's part of the practice. Hey, when you don't want to lose 2 days setting up your new laptop, right? Because then you're shifting all of your timelines off by 2 days. The boss says, hey, congrats, you got a new laptop. You want to be able to get that laptop and then burn it, right? Like hit the ground running and show like, oh, thank you for the new laptop because now I'm this much faster, and still hit all your deadlines. Find your favorite use cases. I'm going to get to this in a second. Like, find your favorite use cases. You don't have to be an expert in everything, but it's a good idea to find things that bring you joy. Find something that you get excited about. I also like to, think about your team, right? If you've already got somebody that goes really deep on Oracle, for example, maybe that's not the best place for you to go and become an expert. Maybe you should find something else that your team needs, like your observability. Maybe you should be the person, if that's what you need, that you go deep on observability, but find something and level up. I like to think of it like character building. Like, hey, I'm going to level up this characteristic. It's a T-shape. Like, this is what I want. This is that thing that kind of, sets you at that next level. You've got to be cross-discipline. Like, go thin and wide. Like, know a little bit about PHP, know a little bit about Spring, know a little bit about Kubernetes, and a little bit about Oracle, and a little bit about observability. Like, know 100 level, 200 level about the things that matter for your org, for your discipline, but then find that one thing. Find the thing that you get excited about that you can go deep on. It's best if that helps out your team, but find that one thing. This is what I like to call T-shaped, and you can Google it. There's a lot of stuff about being T-shaped skill set, T-shaped developer, etc. But that's an important part, because I've seen a lot of people that they're deep in one thing, but that's the only thing. Still valuable to a lot of organizations, and that puts you solidly in that good bucket. But to get into that best bucket, you've got to have both. You have to have something that you go deep in, where you can be that expert, where you can be seen, and you can help out more across your org or other orgs. But you've also got to be broad and have that cross-discipline understanding.
But as SA, I can go dive also on purpose. For example,
Yes.
I might be asked for some technology which I am not expert on, but I need to go and learn as much as I can to answer.
Yep. So again, just this is part of the reason I got to this format of delivering presentations. Customer says, hey, you got to go learn product X. Okay, I'm going to come back. I'm going to go learn product X, and I'm going to come and deliver product X. Here's all the things that I know about product X. Here's a warm up. Here's what I've heard. And I'll tell it in this same way. And when I get to the bottom, like when I get into telling the story at the bottom of product X, I'm going to have a box here that says, to know more, this is where I'd go. Like, I don't know a lot about that, but if I want to know more, I call it Muhammad. Muhammad is the person that I go to for deeper knowledge in this topic, and I will happily connect to other people in my org. So that's what I do as a solution architect or as a sales engineer. I want to know who has that expertise. That's an important part. You got to know. So I'm going to get to that in a sec, but I can jump away, right? I can say right here, I need to know how far my depth, how much I know of a certain topic. If customer says, hey, yeah, go figure this out, how much time I put in, hey, here's what I know. Of course, I want to learn as much as possible, but I also want to know where I go if I need help, right? If I'm the one that has a relationship with customer or stakeholder, then I'm the one that's going to communicate that. Say, hey, look, honestly, this is where my expertise stops. And this is where I go if we need more help beyond this.
This is very important. So you might also delay the response until you get the answer. So you can ask, please wait until I got the answer for you. So
Absolutely.
we expect always when we go to SA that we will find the answer immediately.
Yep. And that's where this comes in, is like, I'm going to go ahead and draw this picture. No, I'll get to it in a sec. I'll come back to that. Let's go back up here. This whole like building the community idea is that office hours idea. Like, it gives me time to take away from production concerns. So we could call this an office hours, right? This idea where I'm kind of sharing my approach. The next time we do this call, you share your approach. We're going to learn from each other, but I'm going to learn what you're awesome at. I don't want to just be this, have a one-way sheet. I also want to know where your strengths are, so that when I go to a customer and they're saying, hey, I need help with product X. Oh, Muhammad is the person that has all of that expertise. That's an important part. So this gets into that networking that you're going to do inside of your org or inside of other orgs, knowing where to go to get answers.
Indeed.
It requires that feedback. Like, in order to have a community around whatever practice you're trying to do, product you're trying to sell, you've got to have stories. You've got to know, like, hey, it worked in this case. It did not work in this case. Going back, you've got to know it works better than this solution does for this use case. That other solution that the other team is using is going to fall when it hits this request per minute. You've got to understand that. You got to get those stories. But it's also nice to find people that rolled high on charisma. You've got to find people that will amplify your stories, good and bad, right? That people are going to listen to. There's a lot of really smart engineers in the world, but not all of them are able to have a conversation or reach out or build a network.
Okay.
Right. So they've got to have, my son likes to call me a hype man for Spring. Spring team is amazing. Right. But sometimes they need somebody that can go out and tell the story to different people. They're working their butts off. Right. So I've got to be a hype man. And sometimes in your team, your engineering team, sometimes your team needs a hype man. Sometimes somebody on your team's got to be the one that's going to play the trumpet, right? And bang the drum, say, look what we did. You've got to help find those people, because those are the people that are going to amplify the stories, the good and bad. If somebody runs into a brick wall on some solution, we don't want another team to run into that same brick wall. We want that team to be, hey guys, don't go this way. There's a brick wall. You want them to give that feedback. You want to share that story. You want to find the people that are going to share those stories and that other people are going to listen to with that charisma and get them engaged with each other. So how do we do that? I know we've already kind of touched on this, making your own slides. So this is kind of an important part. Again, it's a personal observation. There's some sales engineers, solution engineers that'll go out and grab the slides that marketing gave, and they'll take that into a customer and they'll just use those slides. I call those architecture slides, right? The same slides that a non-technical, account exec is going to prepare. The technical sales engineers using the exact same ones. And that's okay for the first one. So for the first engagement, that first pitch, cool. Yeah, make it pretty. All the marketing, all the marketing lingo and the pretty pictures. Great. But if you come back, if customer says, hey, I like that. I like what you saw, or I like what we saw, then you've got to tailor your approach. You've got to deliver customer specific messaging. Like, hey, you came back. Here's what I heard in our conversation when I showed you the architecture. Here's the next step. Here's the tailored content that fits your use case based on our last conversation. You've got to own that message. It has to feel like you took the content from the first meeting and pulled it forward. Like you've got to use as much context as you've got to deliver this tailored message. Use your own style and be authentic. So again, all my content is very similar. I'm using this same format. It's consistent. So when people, my customers, the relationships I have, when they see my presentation style, they know, oh yeah, that's DaShaun. This is for us. This is intended for us. It's written for us. They get it. So they know what to expect. After that, it's about taking control. So, hey, I've delivered this juiced essay talk. If somebody comes back and says, hey, I want to know more, we'll have a conversation. I'll help them tailor their slides. I'll help them understand what their message should be. I'll help them get into that best bucket. They come back again, I'll give them a plan. Like, here's step 1. Here's step 2. Here's step 3. Based on stuff that I've learned, based on my experiences and the experiences that I've got from other people that I interview. Teach, tailor, take control. You're selling a product. You want to think about it that way. Hey, here's the architecture. I understand the use case that you're asking about. Here's a tailored message for that use case. And if you come back, here's the plan. Let's go. Here's the proof of concept or the 6-month trial or whatever it is. Here's the steps that you're going to take. Don't circle back and do the architecture again. Nobody wants to see that again.
But get feedback.
Get feedback. Absolutely. You've got to iterate on it. Product feedback loop. Why is that important? Right?
Yes.
We want to maximize the work not done. So learn from your peers. Learn what's working for others. That round table discussion that I talked about. Share with your peers. Share the things that you've learned. This is a really important part of being in that best bucket of solution architect. If your customer had success doing something this way, tell everybody, guys, this worked. This was wonderful. But at the same time, if your customer ran into a problem, you've got to tell everybody so nobody else runs into that problem, right? You don't want a rumor mill going around, oh, well, it doesn't work in this use case. You've got to get the feedback back from the customer, right? The Spring team, one of the things, they can't go out and talk to the millions of developers all the time. They can't be interrupted. They're working on the next version of Spring. So it's hard, right? They definitely do a good job of interacting with the Stack Overflow and the GitHub issues and all that. But
even on the release, even on the release with the bugs, description is completely give you everything you need to know.
Yes, absolutely.
They do a great job on this. Yes.
And now part of my job, not sales, but I still got to get that feedback. So I use that same concept. I want to get all the good and the bad back to the spring team as fast as possible. Collaborate, right? Don't do the thing on your own in 5 hours that you could do with somebody else in 2. Collaborate and cooperate. Maximize the work not done. Another part of that is I put my stuff in GitHub. I practice everything. I'd rather iterate on a demo that I did last month than scratch and start a new one. Build out your demos, build out your use cases, build out your expertise, and practice. So when I set up an office hours, if nobody comes to the office hours, guess what I'm doing? I'm just practicing my demos. And that means I've got a block of time every week to just practice my demos if nobody shows up. And that's okay.
DaShaun, to collaborate, I have maybe one stupid question. If you want to do some requirement with your team, so you are managing you are doing the solution for a specific team and you want to ask them to maybe tweak or change specific requirement, and you didn't get the capacity from anyone to do this. Mm-hmm. Do you have the capability to do it yourself as maybe POC for the team and demo it for them? Absolutely, I do. That is a part of this. That is the pitch, right? So what you're saying, hey, I think that's a great way of applying this. I think that we should change this solution or this requirement. And here's why. Here's my pitch. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah, maybe it's not using the new software that you just purchased. It's not the latest technology, but here's how it's going to deliver meaningful outcomes. Here's how we can adopt it and how we can continue. Here's a training plan. I will absolutely prepare that pitch. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. And that's it. And if you've got that expertise, as you get more confident, practice that pitch, do it, right? There's a huge difference between I read something that somebody else did. I understand their solution for their use case. There's a big difference between that and having a practiced demo that you can share with somebody, right? And you make it. I'll show this other thing. This is another drawing that I do a lot. This is the way we do it today. I would like to change that requirement, or let's say this is the requirement. I would like to do an experiment, right? Hey, it's something I prepared. It's something I believe. Here's my pitch. I do that thing, and give me, let's say, 5 days. Ask for time. Give me 5 days to deliver this experiment. And if my outcome is equal to or better than the current requirements, let me go forward with it. Mm-hmm. So whatever this is, 5 days or 1 day or whatever, it's just got to be time boxed. So let me just change that. Right. And it has to have like the requirements, right? Just say, so we have a deadline. We have a deadline for the experiment itself. Yep. Say, hey, I would like to change the current requirement to use this. Here's an experiment that will validate that request, that experiment. So we'll do it in line. And if it's not, we just throw it away. If it doesn't validate the request, or if the hypothesis isn't validated, just throw it away. Awesome. So how much time would it take to make that change? Right. And you get that approval up front before you do the experiment, and you go. So does that make sense? So yes. This is, I believe I have this. Again, I've been doing it so long, I don't always remember which book or where I picked it up and practiced it. So I actually have a repository here that is my recommended reading. Oh, there it is right there. Oh, and I know which one. It's the Startup Way. So this
concept of like, hey, that short experiment and how to do that, I picked that up from this book here, The Startup Way.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that book. So these are books that I recommend. Some of these were actually in my sales training, like this one. Like that was a part of my onboarding when I was at Pivotal. Great book, excellent book, still reference it all the time. And a lot of these others are just books that I picked up along the way. This one at the top is the one that I recommend the most often. This is a big, it'll kind of resonate with like that T-shaped idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of being a generalist instead of a specialist, and how that is actually, in my mind, it puts you in that best bucket. So yeah, a lot of this is a lot of sales focus here. But then also there's some other, these are books that are on my backlog that I'm getting ready to read. This is what I'm reading right now or listening to right now. And some of them I've already listened to or I've already read. So I'm not recommending these. I'm just saying that these are the books that I'm reading next. These are the ones that I definitely recommend.
And you recommend them in order?
And it depends on who I'm talking to.
Exactly.
So that's something, right? For like a sales engineer, yeah, I might tweak the order. But yeah, for like general purpose, this is the one that I recommend the most. This is the one that resonated with me, like on that personal growth, not worried about my title so much. I'm just at this point. I'm 48 years old, so I'll give it away. I'm 48 years old, and I realize now that my title doesn't matter as much. The money doesn't matter as much as the joy, as the comfort level, the safe. I got to feel safe. Like, hey, I feel in a good spot. I don't feel like I'm being taken advantage of. Those kind of things matter more than the things that mattered when I was younger. The big picture, again, one of the things that drives me is I get to have conversations like this. I'm at this spot and it's relevant to my role. I'm learning from you. This is not a one-way street. I'm getting great feedback from you already. We've already had conversations. This is stuff that I love to do. I love to see the light bulb moments that I get to see. I love having conversations with people from all over the world and sharing solutions, sharing my experience. I get to talk with Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies all the time. And I get to bring those stories and bring those solutions and those ideas. I get to bring them directly to people. And I get to see, you'll see that, oh, that makes sense. I get to see that. And that is just like happiness that I get. Yes, and that happiness lasts way longer than the money that I earned. Right?
Exactly.
Is
more than enough.
Yes. So going back here, these maximizing the work not done, it also kind of allowed me to focus on the important parts of the job. It, like, you can keep yourself really, really busy doing a lot of nothing. And you'll feel busy and you'll feel like you're, oh, look, no, I have to work 50 hours in order to do this thing. But did you need to? By maximizing the work not done, you can focus on the more important things, and things like relationships, right? Building relationships and the networking part is another really important part of this role. I think it's any engineering role, that part where you're a young engineer and you're asking me like, how do I get to the next level? It's a big part of it. Maximize the work not done so you can focus on the next level. Prioritize your stuff. Like, know which account needs the most attention, or which task needs the most attention, and understand how you can help. Where is your expertise? How is your expertise going to help in that situation? But also, Where does your expertise end? And where can you get help when you need it? That's the important part. But this is the big deal. This is the big outcome, is like this approach, this best practice, this juiced essay, doing these things, it increases your credibility. If you've got this peer group internally and you've got regular feedback loops with your customers internally or externally, it creates more opportunities. This whole plan is not just about like, hey, I'm getting a job and I'm busy. No, the best solution architects, the best lead engineers, those are the ones that are getting more opportunities. The reward for good work is more work, right?
Right.
That's a phrase I like to say. The reward for good work is more work. And it's also better opportunities. It's not just the churn. Oh yeah, you know how to copy and paste this thing. No, you're getting better opportunities if you're following this approach. So you're going to get more successful account outcomes faster.
So what is this first?
So this is the whole plan.
Mm-hmm.
This is the office hours approach. This is the solution. This is, right, the workshops were at the top, making your content consumable so that somebody else can deliver it and people can learn from it, iterate on it. But this is a big key, right? Lots of people have workshops in their back pocket, but not this part. This is a big part of that best bucket. It's the weekly office hours. Take your technical content, product updates. So you can think spring office hours, right? We have that in common. So you understand how spring office hours work.
Yes.
But I was doing this with my customers. So here I am. I deliver I have a weekly hour direct with a customer. Today I have it with maybe an internal org or 2 internal orgs, and I've got multiple slots throughout the week where I'm delivering this regular content. It's a regularly scheduled show every week, and I've got a regular audience. My target audience. Now, this audience, there's an important piece here. I'm not looking, and nor is Spring Office Hours, we're not looking for 1 million people to watch that show. We care more about the quality than the quantity. We want to find people, and this is in all the solutions, we want to find those people that rolled high in charisma that are going to not just consume, but also expand and share what they learn. We want to find people like you who are learning and consuming all this technical content, and they're learning all the new products, and they've got their own stories and opportunities for growth. We want to find all of that, opportunities for networking, internal, external. We want to consume that and share that. And then we want that to extend. We want to be able to extend into Arab speaking or Arabic speaking communities. We've got to find somebody that can help us get there. Right? We don't have a Spring Developer Advocate that speaks Arabic that I know of.
Yes.
It's you, right? That's you, Spring Developer Advocate. So this is the idea. This is where it becomes important, because we have also got to get that two-way street. And when you've got 1 million followers, you can't listen to them all. So the size of this community that I deliver my office hours to, I try to make it a little bit exclusive. Don't open it up to everybody, right? You want to make it special. So when I'm delivering these as a solution architect, I build that audience specifically. There's an email invite. It's not a show. It's not something anybody can join and chat. This office hours that I'm talking about it's custom, it's target audience. You're sharing, and it's regular, just like we're doing, same format. Hey, here's the calendar. Here's the product updates that are coming. Here's the roadmap of the product. Here's some new stuff. Yeah.
You know exactly who's your audience that you want to attend.
Yes, first name basis. These are people that are important. These are the people that rolled high on charisma. In fact, if we're lucky, we'll do an office hours on Tuesday like we do, and we'll have somebody that will go and deliver that same content. They'll watch this podcast, they'll watch this show, they'll turn around, they'll go to the repository, they'll download the markdown, they'll practice it, and they'll deliver it to their team. That's what we want, so that we can get that feedback there. And somebody says, hey, what about this? This is a good question that we need. And they bring it back, and then they share it back, and then we add it and we make it available for everybody else. But that two-way street where we're delivering enablement and strategy, we've got to get back the feedback and stories so that we can iterate on it.
Of course.
And it comes right back into our GitHub repository so that everybody else can consume it, whether that's internal or external. But you have to have that plan. And that's the idea. Interesting account stories. Do the updates, do the contact. And then you also got to have time for Q&A. You have to have time for the customer to say, hey, we ran into this problem. We want product team to know about it. Or, hey, we want this feature next. Now, that's the other cool part here, is if you've got this two-way street that's regular, your feedback becomes even more important to the product team. So I'll paint that picture. Mohammed's got this regular office hours with 5 of the best customers, and their customers are giving, actually, let's say it's 5 of the better customers, not the best customers, the better customers. But he's got regular contact with 5 of the better customers. And he's got this regular office hours interaction. And it's been going on for months. But then somebody else comes in from one of our best customers. Our best customer gives 1 issue request, and they want it prioritized. The product team that's been getting information from Mohammed all the time from these better customers, Mohammed's feedback is going to actually be more important than Johnny's 1 request that the customer drove, that we have no context around because there's no story, there's no history around the product. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
This constant loop, this relationship, this channel, two-way street of delivery and feedback makes the content, whatever it is going in, it makes it more valuable to the product team.
But I have one concern on this. How do you manage to get this short feedback loop with the customers? How can you book a time for them? Because you need to do this periodically, maybe every week, every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How can you manage? I think it needs some skills from you in order to book customer time. Yep.
So let's do that example. You and I are in different time zones. This is the time that works. It's Friday, 11 o'clock for me. This is the time that's going to work best for us. Okay. Maybe that's not going to work for me every week, but you and I could have this conversation every 2 weeks. I would commit to that at 11 o'clock. And I'm going to give you a time box. We're only going to do it for an hour, but every 2 weeks we could do this time because I know it works for both of us. You don't have to show up. Mm-hmm. If you're my customer, you don't have to show up, but I'm going to block off this time from 11 to 12 every other week. And I'll send you an invite. Mm-hmm. And then there's going to be a day where you're going to, hey, can I add so-and-so to this invite? And I'm going to have your peer, but it'll still be at this same time. Mm-hmm. Now, great question here is like, hey, do I do this forever? No. What do we want to do? I want to do this so that it gets in the rhythm where, hey, here's the practice. I want to show it to you so that we're doing it. And I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks. Hey, here, let's run through it a few times. We'll do it for several months. And then I should be able to back away. And then this box changes from me to you. Mm-hmm. But your peers are now here. You're the one that's driving. And you found the people that have the high charisma, and they're going out and delivering the messages that you're getting from product. That's how we're going to operate it, right? Just like I set up here. Like, hey, I was delivering office hours, and I had my folks that were super smart, high charisma. They were delivering office hours. And in fact, their office hours were only 30 minutes, right? I had to deliver content so that it could reach across different orgs. But maybe here, their office hours were only 30 minutes. They could focus the content on the product use cases that matched their organization. They're part of the organization. But if I were to back away, they can still have their office hours. Here's another step is once they're running the office hours, I just ask them to invite me and make me optional because I've got access to all these. So that I can come in and drop in and like, hey, I've got a new thing to show. I've got a new demo. But it changes it a little bit, right? I've got to then go to multiple office hours or do an invite or say, hey, here's our regular scheduled time. Can I drop in?
Clear. Perfect.
So yeah, it works. What other questions are coming up?
So maybe what I was looking for also, I need time to be matured on this. But as a SA, what should I look for next step?
So to like, hey, what's the next step? Here we can go. Like you can have this, right? This is the last slide. Here's where it is. This is where I was practicing. I'll go and fix the images. But all the content's here. Like take it, practice it, think about it, run it. So what is the next step? I think reading some of these might help. But we can have a conversation. What is the next step? What does this look like? How does it look like for you? The main thing I want to get across is I want you to try to get to this picture. I want you to try to get to this picture. Think about how you can do this with your most strategic accounts, your most strategic internal customers, or whatever it is. Get to that point where you can be delivering constant feedback, constant updates and enablement, and get that constant feedback, whether it's weekly or every other week. Figure out, like there's no requirement on when it is. Figure out what your loop needs to be like, right? If your product doesn't update it often, maybe it doesn't need to be every week. But think about it and fit that in. But the practice, you got to start with one.
Yes.
You got to start with one. And remember, you got to do your own story. So this is just a framework for how to go forward. And you've got to build your own. Make it authentic to you. Makes sense.
Makes sense.
So for you, for anybody that's watching the show, I'll throw it out there. Like we can have a follow-up. What are the questions? Let's set it up. Here's the office hours. Here's what we're doing. But let's do a follow-up session and let's get some feedback. Right? I put my contact info out there. Let's get some feedback and let's do this again. Continuing that practice. That's the next step. Let's do this again. Let's get feedback. And I can go through the exact same slides, incorporating the questions that we got, incorporating the feedback that we got, and tailor it specific to our audience, that targeted audience.
So let's apply what we discussed.
Absolutely. Right? That's the deliberate practice.
That will be perfect. DaShaun, I would like to thank you a lot for your time. And I would like to thank you again that you give us this opportunity to discuss something outside the spring. As I told you, maybe the majority know DaShaun as the spring man. So yeah. We're happy to have you today.
I don't even know how to explain how happy I am that I got to do this with you. You clearly have a massive community because the outreach has increased already. So I've seen it. I already feel connected to your community and it's been wonderful, right? I'm getting great feedback and questions and stuff. So it's been awesome already. Long before we recorded this, I was happy that you and I have a relationship and I'm really excited to working with you more. So yes, I'm looking forward already to do this again.
I will try to collect everything, by the way. I will try to collect everything I got in the questions, and we will be in touch on this. And if we will be able to find a new slot in your time, we will have it again. Thank you so much, DaShaun.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.